This is Saudi Arabia, a kingdom of 36 million people on the Arabian Peninsula, holder of the world's second-largest oil reserves, the custodian of Islam's two holiest sites, and a country that, in June 2018, lifted a ban on women driving that had been in place, in various forms, for decades. The driving ban was not the whole system. It was the symbol the world chose to represent the system. The system was larger, older, and harder to lift with a single decree. What follows is daily life in a country where the rules for women are changing faster than at any point in its modern history, and where the speed, the direction, and the destination are controlled by the same authority that set the original rules. The guardianship system, mahram in its traditional religious framing, wilaya in its legal form, tied every Saudi woman to a male guardian for most of the significant decisions of her life. A woman needed her guardian's permission to marry, to divorce, to travel internationally, to obtain certain medical procedures, to leave a shelter for domestic violence. In practice, through most of the 20th century and into the 21st, the guardian's permission was also required for education, for employment, for accessing many government services, and in numerous documented cases for leaving the house. The guardian was her father before marriage, her husband after it, her son if widowed, her brother in the absence of the above. The chain of male authority ran across her entire life and required a male link at each stage. The system had religious justification in conservative interpretations of Islamic jurisprudence, and it had the force of law in Saudi Arabia's legal code. It also had daily, practical weight that abstract descriptions do not convey. A woman in her 50s in Riyadh describes the specific texture of the guardianship years. Every trip outside the house calculated against the availability of a male guardian. Every document requiring a signature that was not hers to give. The dependency was not theoretical. It was the shape of a Tuesday. It was the shape of every Tuesday. A woman whose guardian was cooperative navigated the system with friction. A woman whose guardian was controlling, absent, or malicious had no reliable legal route out of whatever he decided. Domestic abuse shelters required guardian approval for entry in many cases. The guardian from whom a woman needed shelter was in some cases the same person whose approval was required to access it. The system was enforced unevenly, and its application varied by family, by region, by social class, and by the disposition of the individual guardian. Some Saudi women experienced the guardianship as minimal interference in daily life. Others experienced it as a total constraint. The law made both possible and guaranteed neither. The campaign to lift the driving ban was not spontaneous. Saudi women had been publicly demanding the right to drive since at least 1990, when a group of 47 women drove their cars in convoy through the streets of Riyadh in a coordinated act of protest. They were stopped by police, briefly detained, and a number of them lost their jobs in the aftermath. The ban stayed. In 2013, a group of women filmed themselves driving and published the footage online. Several were detained. The ban stayed. Women who had been organizing around the driving ban were part of a broader network that had been pushing for guardianship reform for decades before the reforms came. They used petitions, social media, international press. and quiet organizing inside a country where public protest is illegal. On the 26th of June 2018, the ban was lifted by royal decree. The first licenses were issued. The first women drove legally. The moment was global news. The women who had been arrested for driving in 1990 were in their 60s by the time the ban was lifted. Some of the women who had been most publicly active in campaigning for the reform were arrested in the weeks before and after the decree came into effect, detained not for driving but for their broader activism, for their contacts with foreign media, for their advocacy on guardianship reform and prisoner rights. Lujan Al-Hathlol, one of the most prominent campaigners for the driving ban's removal, was arrested in May 2018, 1 month before the ban was lifted. She was held for nearly 3 years, during which she and other detainees alleged torture and sexual harassment in custody. She was released in February 2021 and remains under a travel ban. The ban was lifted. The woman who campaigned loudest for it was in a cell when it happened. The driving ban was one piece of a larger reform program that has been moving through Saudi Arabia since Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman consolidated power in the years following 2017. The Vision 2030 plan, the government's program for diversifying the economy away from oil dependency, placed female workforce participation at the center of its economic targets. In 2017, female labor force participation in Saudi Arabia was approximately 17%. The government set a target of 30% by 2030. By 2024, the figure had reached approximately 33%, ahead of the target. The expansion of women's employment was not purely a social reform, it was an economic calculation. An economy preparing for a post-oil future cannot afford to leave half its educated population outside the workforce. The women entering the Saudi labor market in large numbers since 2018 are doing so in part because the state needs them there. The reforms that accompanied or followed the driving ban removed the requirement for guardian permission to travel internationally for women over 21. They allowed women to register births, marriages, and deaths. They expanded women's access to government services without a male intermediary. They opened entertainment, sports, and cultural events to mixed gender attendance for the first time. Concerts, cinemas, sporting events, all of which had been gender segregated or closed to women entirely. The religious police, the Commission for the Promotion of Virtue and Prevention of Vice, known informally as the Mutawa, were stripped of their arrest powers in 2016. The force that had enforced gender segregation on the streets for decades could no longer detain. They remained present. They could no longer act. The changes were real. They arrived by decree, from above, at the pace the Crown Prince chose. In a shopping mall in Jeddah on a Thursday evening, a group of young women in their early 20s are at a coffee shop. Some wear the full abaya and niqab. Some wear the abaya open over Western clothes. One wears jeans and a loose shirt with no head covering. All three presentations are legal under the current rules, which no longer mandate a specific dress code for women in public. The oldest among them is 23. She was 17 when the driving ban was lifted. She has no adult memory of the world before the reforms. The closed cinemas, the segregated restaurants, the driving prohibition, These are history to her in the way that history is always slightly unreal to the people who did not live inside it. She is studying software engineering. Her mother studied education because it was one of the few options open to women when she was of university age. Her grandmother did not study past secondary school. The three generations sit within living distance of each other in Jeddah and represent three entirely different relationships to what a Saudi woman's life can contain. The young woman at the coffee shop is not unfamiliar with the constraints that remain around her. She knows the system did not dissolve. She navigates it with the fluency of someone who has always known its edges, where the new rules apply and where the old ones still hold in practice, if not in law. She is not waiting to be liberated. She is building a career inside the conditions available to her, which are significantly wider than they were and are not yet as wide as she would choose. Both things are true, and she holds both without needing them resolved. What has not changed is at least as significant as what has. The guardianship system has been reformed, but not abolished. Women over 21 may travel independently and access most government services. Women below 21 still require guardian permission in several categories. Marriage still requires guardian consent, regardless of the woman's age. The guardian's formal role in major life decisions has been reduced in scope, but not eliminated. Saudi Arabia does not permit political parties or independent civil society organizations. There is no parliament with legislative authority. The reforms that have come from the top and can, in the same mechanism, be reversed from the top. They are executive decisions, not constitutional guarantees. There is no independent court to which a woman can appeal if a reform is rolled back or selectively applied. The activists who pushed for the reforms before they came are the clearest evidence of the system's limits. Lujan al-Hathlol is under a travel ban. Nasima al-Sada, another activist arrested in 2018, was released in 2021 and also remains under a travel ban. Samar Badawi, who had campaigned for years against the guardianship system, was arrested and released and arrested again. The government that lifted the driving ban arrested the women who had campaigned for it. The message carried by both actions simultaneously was not difficult to read. Reform will come when the state decides it will come. The women who push for it before the state is ready will pay a price that the state also sets. The contradiction at the center of Saudi Arabia's transformation is not hidden, and it is not incidental. It is a government modernizing women's lives as an economic strategy, at a pace it controls, in a direction it chooses, using the same concentrated authority that maintained the old restrictions. The strategy has a name and a target date. Vision 2030, the reform program launched in 2016, set explicit benchmarks for women's labor force participation as part of a broader plan to reduce the kingdom's dependence on oil revenue. The target, 30% female workforce participation, was reached years ahead of schedule. By the early 2020s, the figure had climbed past that mark. A pace of change that surprised even some of the plan's own architects. The guardianship rules that had required a woman to have a male relative's permission to work, travel, or obtain many government documents were loosened in stages after 2019. Not eliminated, but narrowed enough to let the labor participation numbers move. The reform was framed, consistently and explicitly, as economic necessity rather than a matter of rights, a distinction the government has never blurred and has no incentive to. The women entering the workforce in larger numbers than ever before are doing so inside a system that remains unreformed in its fundamental architecture. The concentration of power in a single authority that gives and can take, that opens and can close, that lifted the driving ban and imprisoned the women who asked for it. The timeline of those two events sits uncomfortably close together. The ban on women driving was lifted in June 2018, celebrated internationally as a landmark. In the weeks before it took effect, several of the women who had campaigned for exactly that right, driving activists including Lujan Al-Hathlul, were arrested. Some remained in detention for years afterward, with reports of the conditions of their detention drawing international scrutiny. The government that granted the right and the government that jailed the people who had asked for it were not rival factions. They were the same authority, exercising the same prerogative in both directions within the same season. The lesson embedded in that sequence was not subtle. Change would come, but only on terms set from above, and asking for it publicly carried its own separate risk. Elements of the guardianship system remain in place even after the reforms. Some decisions around marriage and certain matters concerning children still route through male relatives in ways that a fully independent adult in most other legal systems would not encounter. The Abshire government app, which for years let a male guardian track and restrict a woman's international travel electronically, became for a period one of the most visible symbols of how thoroughly the old system had been digitized, even as parts of it were being dismantled elsewhere. In Riyadh, the woman who drives herself to work each morning passes the exit from her neighborhood that for years she could only take with a male guardian beside her. She passes it every day, and she does not think about it every day. That, too, is a kind of change, when the new normal stops requiring conscious acknowledgement of the old one. There is a particular kind of forgetting that only happens once a restriction is genuinely gone, rather than merely eased, the moment a rule stops being a live decision made every morning and becomes simply the shape of the road. Women old enough to remember arranging a driver, coordinating a brother's schedule, or waiting for a husband to be free, describe this forgetting almost sheepishly, as if it should feel like more than it does. It rarely does. That is, in its way, the clearest evidence that something real changed. She is good at her job. She was always good at her job. For most of her working life, getting to the job cost her a third of what the job paid. The arithmetic was not abstract for the women who lived it. Hiring a private driver before 2018 was a routine and substantial household expense for working women without a family member able or willing to shuttle them daily, commonly estimated at a significant fraction of a mid-level salary once fuel, the driver's wage, and the coordination overhead were counted. The driving ban was, among everything else it represented, a direct tax on women's labor force participation, paid in cash, every month to make up for a restriction that had nothing to do with capability and everything to do with permission. That specific absurdity is over. The keys are in her hand. The road is real. The destination is chosen by her. How far the road goes, which exits are open, and what is permitted at the end of it, those questions are still being decided by someone else, in a room she did not vote to assemble, by an authority that does not require her permission to set the rules or to change them again. She drives to work. The office is 10 minutes away. She arrives on her own terms, within the terms she has been given. For now, that is what the morning offers. She takes it.